Hello there, I'm Black Bright News, and I wanted to talk about this digital ID U-turn and just my thoughts about it and why I think it's happened. And as you know, I normally keep it concise so I don't drift. And so I'm going to share it with you today, and I've called it the digital ID U-turn, what just happened and why does it matter? So I want to talk you through a decision that landed quietly but carries a lot of weight. The government has dropped plans to make a digital ID mandatory for people to work in the UK. Not just paused, not just delayed, but step back from compulsory part altogether. And at first glance, it can feel like just another policy tweak, another line in the political churn. But this one is worth slowing down for because it tells us something important about trust, technology, and how power works when it brushes up against everyday life. So let's start with what was actually on the table. The plan wasn't for a physical ID card in your pocket. It was a digital identity held on your phone, something like a government-backed ID wallet. The idea was that instead of showing a passport or a bundle or documents when you start a job, you'd show this digital credential. Employers would scan it, the system would confirm your right to work, and in theory, the whole process would be quicker, cleaner, and less open to fraud. On paper, that's not a crazy idea. Many of us already use digital proof of identity in bits and pieces of our lives. We log into bank apps with our fingerprints, we access NHS services online, we prove who we are to private companies every day, often without thinking too hard about it. So the government's argument was simple enough. Why not bring that together into one secure, state-backed system and modernise how we do things? But here's where the tone changed. This wasn't just an optional convenience. Under the original plan, if you wanted to work, you would have needed to be part of that digital ID system. No digital ID, no job. And that's the point where a lot of people from very different political backgrounds started to feel uneasy. Because work isn't a luxury. It's not an add-on service you can opt in or out of. So it's not an add-on service you can opt in or out of. Work is how people pay rent, feed their families, keep the lights on. When access to work becomes conditional on enrolling in a new government-run digital system, the question stops, is this efficient? And becomes, what happens if this goes wrong? Or if I don't trust it? Or if I simply can't use it? And those concerns weren't abstract. Privacy campaigners warned about function creep, the idea that a system built for one purpose quietly expands into many others. Disability groups raised alarms about people who don't have smartphones or who struggle with digital interfaces. Migrant support organisations worried about errors, mismatches, or delays, leaving people unable to prove their status in real time. And beyond all of that, there was the deeper, harder to define anxiety about surveillance, about being required to carry a digital key to participate in society. The government insists that that wasn't the intention. Ministers were clear that this wouldn't be a national ID card in the old-fashioned sense. They said police would stop you in the street and demand to see it. Oh, let me read that a bit again. The government insists that this wasn't the intention. Ministers were clear that this wouldn't be a national ID card in the old-fashioned sense. They said police wouldn't stop you in the street and demand to see it. Who knows? They said the data would be protected. Who knows? Encrypted, tightly regulated. And all of that may well be true, but policy isn't just about intention. It's about perception, confidence and consent. And that's where this plan ran into trouble. What seems to have happened behind the scenes is a realisation that pushing ahead with a mandatory digital ID for work was hardening opposition rather than building support. Instead of easing people into a new system, it was forcing the issue at the most sensitive pressure point in adult life, employment. The fear was that if people felt coerced, they wouldn't just reject the compulsory element, they would reject the entire digital identity project outright. So the government blinked, or if you want to have a more generous reading, the government listened. By dropping the requirement, they've shifted the frame. Digital ID can still exist, it can still be developed, tested and offered, but it won't be the single gate you have to pass through to earn a living. Traditional documents will remain valid. Other digital proofs like existing e-visas or passports will still be acceptable. Choice, at least for now, has been restored. That choice matters more than it might sound because trust in systems like this is fragile. Once it's lost, it's incredibly difficult to rebuild. We've seen that with the past attempts at ID cards in the UK, which collapsed under public resistance long before technology itself was the problem. There's a long institutional memory here, both among politicians and the public, of schemes that overreached and paid the price. There's also the political context to consider. This government has already been accused of a series of U-turns, of announcing bold reforms and then quietly stepping back when the resistance grows loud enough. In that environment, doubling down on a deeply unpopular digital mandate would have carried real electoral risk. The calculation may have been less about ideology and more about timing. Don't fight a battle if you don't need to fight one right now. But it would be too easy to dismiss this as pure politics because there's a genuine policy lesson buried in it. Technology doesn't land in a vacuum. The more central a system is to daily life, the more it has to earn legitimacy, not just functionality. You can't roll out something that affects millions of livelihoods and expect people to trust it simply because it's efficient or modern. So what happens next? The government says there will be a public consultation. There's not just procedural box ticking. It's an acknowledgement that the shape of a digital identity system can't be decided solely by technical experts or ministers in Whitehall. Questions about who controls the data, how long it's stored, who can access it, and for what purposes aren't secondary details. They are the system. It's likely that what emerges, if anything, will be more modular. Instead of one monolithic digital ID, we may see a framework that allows different forms of verification to coexist, a passport here, an e-visa there, a voluntary digital wallet for those who want it. Less this is how it works now, and more here are the options. The approach won't satisfy everyone. Some will argue it weakens the benefits and without a single standard, the system remains fragmented and inefficient. Others will say it doesn't go far enough, that any government-backed digital identity carries unacceptable risks. But it does mark a shift away from compulsion and towards consent. And in this space, that's a significant philosophical move. There's also the broader question that this episode raises, one that goes beyond digital ID. How do we as a society decide when convenience is worth the trade-off? How much friction in our system is actually a form of protection, a pause that forces human judgment rather than automated decision-making? And who bears the cost when those systems fail? Because they do fail. Databases glitch, records are wrong, appeals take time, and when identity is tied directly to your ability to work, a technical error isn't just an inconvenience, it's a crisis. By stepping back now, the government may have avoided learning that lesson the hard way. None of this means digital identity is going away. The direction of travel is clear, not just in the UK but globally. More services will move online, more verification will happen digitally. The question isn't whether technology will play a role in how we prove who we are, it's how much power we give it and under what conditions. This U-turn if that's what we call it, suggests that there are still limits, that there are lines politicians are wary of crossing, especially when the public reaction is sharp and sustained. That's not nothing in an age where policy can feel increasingly distant and automated. It's a reminder that public pressure expressed consistently